unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
Do you remember where you were on 9/11? The original one? Not last year. Not the one in 2008, but the one in, 2001? I do. And it's all bad memories. The whole thing. In a earlier podcast, I told a story about a woman who murdered my offspring. She tricked me into getting her pregnant. And then decided to abort the baby after I had announced it to my friends and family. Real psychotic stuff, right? Like the worst. She's the worst person I've ever known. She did the most damage to me out of any person in my life, for sure. And I didn't even know her long, but that when you murder somebody's offspring, it's an act of terrorism. It's terrible. She should be in jail. She should have suffered the same fate as those dudes that flew planes into the buildings. Who were they? I don't know. I wasn't there. But yeah, that morning, our relationship didn't last for very long. We were in and out of that relationship in a few months, really. Maybe 6 months tops at the very top end. I won't get into the details about her, but she was part of the story. And in fact, if I remember right, it was maybe the last morning of our relationship before I found out she was pregnant and all that stuff. But the last morning of the dating part of it, right? I woke up and without going into details of everything, we weren't a good match, I was convincing myself that I liked her because I think it was one of my last, she was also one of my last moments of savior complex. I had savior complex for a long time. I still have it a little bit. This podcast might be part of it. I'll be honest. But so I had savior complex with her. I was attracted to some of her darkness. She was a dark person, very dark person, lots of personal problems, and I always feel like I can get in there and shine things up. But anyway, it wasn't happening. It wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to save the day. I'm not Jesus. That's just the way it pans out in the end. Surprise, surprise, I am not the savior of mankind. Don't believe what you hear. But we'd woken up that morning. She had to wake up and go to work. She was a florist, and she had to go to a wedding across the Golden Gate Bridge up in Marin or something like that. So she woke up early. Well, in those days with drinking and all, like what? I guess it was early, 8 o'clock. It was 8 o'clock-ish, Yeah. I mean, because what time did the planes hit? The planes hit like at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, right? So yeah, I guess I got the news a little bit on delay, maybe. So she leaves. I can't go back to sleep. She leaves the house, and I can't go back to sleep, so I turn on the TV. I have my TV at the end of my bed. And of course, what happens on TV? Boom. First thing, pretty sure, first thing I see is the World Trade Center, the first one, on fire. So it must have been pretty early, 3 hours earlier, because of this wedding. I see it, and I'm watching it going, fuck, what the hell's happening here? A plane flew into it? They didn't have any footage of it yet. You remember, if you were watching, we were all just going, what happened? Who knows? There were reports that a plane flew into it. Nobody knew if it was a big one, if it was a small one, whatever. But so I'm sitting there watching, and it was pretty much right after I turned it on. I don't think I'd been watching for very long. I was a little bit transfixed, but you know, it was kind of like, at this time, you know, maybe somebody had mentioned it might be a terrorist attack, but we were kind of wondering, you know, because we didn't have video of a jetliner flying right into it yet. But eyewitness accounts were coming in, but no video. And then that second plane hit, and I watched it live, and just like everybody else in the world, I'm thinking, what the fuck? Holy shit. Sat up in bed, rubbed my eyes, couldn't believe what I was seeing. Kind of reminded me of I had the same sort of experience when the space shuttle Challenger blew up. I was in bed late for school, and I just happened to be watching it with one eye open on my TV. You know, I was just barely drifting back to sleep, and then the space shuttle blew up. And I thought, what? Did I dream that? Same sort of thing happened on 9/11. I was watching the news, but then when that second one hit, it was insane. And then, of course, you remember the whole day just sitting there. Everybody's freaking out. And I called this woman, the murderer of my offspring, the killer, the terrible, awful woman. But at the time, I didn't realize how terrible she was. So I was concerned about her. I called her and I said, "Hey, what are you doing? Don't go to work," because they were saying, "Okay, this is terrorists, and we don't know what other targets are. You know, there's other planes in the air. They were saying we have reports of 3 other planes that have been hijacked, and then 5 other planes, and who knows how many planes." And so nobody knew what the fuck was going on. All we knew is that there were a whole bunch of planes hijacked, and one of them was San Francisco bound. We knew that. And so I'm calling her and I'm saying, "Hey, don't go to that wedding. Trust me, they're not going to have it anyway." And she's like, "Oh, don't be silly. I have to go anyway." And I'm like, "No, seriously, stop. When you get to work, you got to stop, turn on the radio, turn on the television. There are planes in the air that have been hijacked. Nobody knows what the targets are, and they're even saying that the Golden Gate Bridge might be one of them." That was something they were saying. And of course somebody would say that. Why wouldn't you? If you don't know what the targets are, you would think, well, shit, big giant landmarks. Why not? Why not do the Golden Gate Bridge? You know? But she's just being idiotic and going, "No, it'll be fine. You just worry too much." I mean, just being an idiot. She was an idiot. Let's be honest. She was a total idiot. A dark thinking, morose idiot. But so I didn't make any headway with her. I called her back a few times. I said, "Are you really going?" You know, early cell phones. You know, not everybody had a cell phone back then. We certainly didn't have iPhones. But yeah, she was going, and then finally she made it to her wedding, and of course it was canceled. Nobody wants to get married on 9/11. Not on the original one, anyway. Everything was canceled that day. All the flights were canceled. You know? And nobody knew what the fuck happened. It seemed like a bunch of terrorists flew planes into the buildings. Makes sense. Could happen. We all know. We already knew that the Middle East and the U.S. weren't best of pals, weren't getting along. So that was that day. Years go by. George Bush does his thing. Everybody freaks out, overreacts. Suddenly there's a war with Iraq. Everybody was fine with Afghanistan because you're thinking, well, they're over there hiding in caves, fine. But then the Iraq things happens and politics start getting really weird. We're like, what? Weapons of mass destruction? Things start getting weird. The story gets weird. That was when Mueller was lying about the weapons of mass destruction. Suddenly things weren't seeming straight up, you know? And you can see where I'm going with this. And I'm no 9/11 conspiracy theorists. So, but over the years, and here in San Francisco, there's been many. And I've watched all the documentaries, and I still kind of retain the Occam's razor thing. When they say it's an inside job and a big conspiracy with lots of people, I go, probably not. Probably not. I've watched all the documentaries where they try to say that there was explosives in there, and I just try to reason with these people. I go, why would you do all the explosives when you can just destroy it with a plane? Because they had to get rid of the evidence. They had to make sure it went all the way to the ground. Yeah? Are you sure? Why? Do you think that they could fix the building once 2 jets have flown into each one? Is that the thing that if it hadn't fallen down, they would have just gone up there and fixed it? They wouldn't have just leveled it anyway later? You know, they could have got rid of the evidence that way too. So yeah, these big conspiracies that involve many moving parts, and I watched every angle of the jets hitting the Pentagon and all these things, and it is curious, and it does suck. There are glaring things like finding the passports amongst the rubble. Ugh, God, that kind of stuff just, it's nauseating. You know, why? And sometimes you think it's just an active way for them. Occam's razor would say somebody in the government is thinking, well, we have to look competent, so let's plant some evidence to make the story go the way, even if the story's true, you know. Let's plant this evidence to just make it easier, so we look competent, so we look like we have answers, because Lord knows people freak out when there aren't answers, and they make up answers anyway. Conspiracy theorists are part of the problem. They're part of why people plant evidence, you know? So, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and lecture to you about 9/11. I don't know what happened. And when it really comes down to it, do I think George Bush, do I think he planned it? Do I think he was in on it? No. Is it possible that certain American actors were in on it, meaning in on the actual plan that happened, meaning the hijacking of planes, etc.? You know, if you're going to kill 3,000 people in the World Trade Center, no matter who you are, whether you're a Saudi Arabian terrorist or a Saudi Arabian terrorist working with Israel, working with the United States, working with the CIA, whoever you are, you don't need to get a military plane to do it. You can just do it the way it was done. It's plenty. It's plenty. You don't need to make it more dramatic. You don't need to make it more complicated. Simple works better. The fewer people that know about it, the better. And whether it was an inside job that certain help was funded, you know, because of course the U.S., the CIA trained bin Laden originally. So there's that weird connection anyway. So you can say that the U.S. was complicit in that. But does that mean that was the plan? Let's train bin Laden so he can come blow up our buildings? No, probably not. It was probably let's train him so that he can go after our enemies, Russia and Afghanistan. You know, fight a war for us. Called blowback. Sometimes it sucks what happens. But that doesn't mean that somebody here didn't know that they were planning it or weren't lazy about it or thought we can capitalize on it, not thinking the buildings would fall down and it would be as catastrophic. Do I think that maybe, would the U.S. do that? Would the U.S. allow something to happen if it served a certain agenda that I was actually reading a lot about at the time? At the time, I was reading a lot about, on the website called the Project for a New American Century, the neocons. Pardon me, I'm getting boring here, I know. But I was reading that website and thinking, wow, well, these guys have a plan. I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it was basically a website outlining exactly what U.S. foreign policy should be. That it should be aggressive and it should be foreign. It should be foreign interventionism. And I thought, well, that sounds aggressive to me. It's not really what I think, but at least they have a plan. And I'm actually very surprised that it's published here on the website for anybody to read, you know? So certain things about it, when you have a bunch of guys like that, would allowing something like that to happen serve their needs to make an enemy? To make all the American people agree, to get agreement from all the American people that we need to be fighting over there. Is it beneficial to look the other way? Let these terrorists do it? Maybe even pass them some notes? I don't know. I don't fucking know. It's not hard to believe when you look at all the other dumb shit that the American government has done. And by the way, when I say that, I'm not singling out the American government. Government by its very nature is bad. So when I'm saying that, I'm talking about power-hungry weirdos that most people don't want to go traipsing around the globe blowing shit up and stealing shit. It's only very few number of people. I remember at the time really defending Dick Cheney and Halliburton because I'm a contrarian and I can do that. Thinking, well, it's good of the private industry. It's good that they supply these things and they're building this infrastructure. Well, I'm a human being. I use oil. So do you. You protester. You use oil as well. So, Halliburton's a company that supplies that industry, and so we're all complicit in that. But then when you start looking at Dick Cheney even closer, and you realize he's a real hardcore neocon, and his company literally benefits from war and the war machine, it makes you think, You don't, for a guy like me, I don't immediately just go, oh, 9/11 was an inside job. It was planned by the CIA. What if it was? Could be. Boy, wouldn't that be dark? Isn't that completely a dark way to look at the world if your own government flew planes and killed 3,000 of its own people and then countless people in Iraq and everywhere else, and they did it just because, oil money or bank money? That's a real dark way to look at it, It's a weird way to look at it, too, because it puts America entirely in control and makes it seem like there couldn't be any other evil anywhere else. But I look at the Middle East and I go, there's plenty of those people that are weird too. Islam is weird. Scary. Did you hear that? That was my stomach. So yeah, lots of possibilities there. Building 7 shouldn't have fallen. I went, I don't know, man. I used to build lots of stuff, build houses of cards, literally, a lot of sand castles. I was always building stuff out in my backyard, my friend's backyard, and so when I looked at those things collapsing, it looked amazing to me, but I watched a million videos of big buildings collapsing, and none of that was surprising to me. It's amazing to watch it just crush down, but how do you fly a plane in the exact place and then have all those explosives? You also have a guy, and it didn't ruin any of the charges. The whole idea that it was orchestrated and they had controlled demolition in it too. It's just like, no, too many ways to get caught for that shit. Same with Building 7. But who knows? I don't know. Are there evil people in the world? Yes, there are. There were at least 8 of them that commandeered those planes, and whether they were Middle Eastern or whether they were CIA agents or KGB or whatever, or Mossad agents, who knows who they were. Whoever they were, there were 8 people that at least agreed to say, okay, yeah, we'll do this. Sure, I'll fly. I'll commandeer a jet filled with people and fly it into a building or fly it into the ground. Sure, I'll do it. So there's at least that many. And we know a lot of people cheered. Could there have been any agreement between those bad people over there and some bad people? Is America free of bad people? Have there ever been people that bad in the American government? I think, just mathematically speaking, I think, sure, probably. Hell, I look at Mueller and I think, he seems kind of that bad. Blatantly lying, to create a war. Dick Cheney, he seems like he might be that bad. I don't know. I think people who get a boner for war, I think a lot of them are that bad. And I think there are a lot of them that like the idea of war because, well, there's bloodlust. Human beings have bloodlust. A lot of people are born fighters. That's one reason. That's just a background reason. Another reason, profit. War makes certain companies lots of money. Hell, there are even good American soldiers who look forward to fighting and killing. Nobody wants to talk about that, but a soldier is programmed to fight and kill. And if you program somebody to do that, they're going to want to do it. Eventually, they're going to want to use their training. And of course, there are podcasts about that. Bloodlust, the dark side of humanity. The darkest side of humanity. As dark as it gets, this idea that we need to find enemies and shoot them and kill them and take their stuff. It's one thing when the resources are really needed and scarce, and nobody faults a starving man for stealing a sandwich. But when things are plentiful and it's kind of about greed, and I know I'm sounding like one of those awful lefties that I used to debate, and I did, and I still stand behind my earlier 2000s defenses of this or that policy. But the lying about the weapons of mass destruction, the war, all the bullshit that stemmed from 9/11, and then that abortion, that terrorist who aborted my kid, murdered my kid. There's really nothing good about 9/11. And here we are, never forgetting. But people have forgotten. A lot of people have forgotten. They've forgotten what it was like that morning. A lot of people now, there are, remember, what are we almost, kids that were born on that day, that kid that was aborted of mine would be 19 years old. He'd be an adult now. How much did a 19-year-old kid know about Pearl Harbor? Not very much. And we've had the internet this whole time, so all of these theories, the millions of theories, I would say that almost most kids are probably convinced that it was an inside job or that America was somehow involved. And I think that might be part of the problem. That's where it seemed the ball started getting rolling against America, the conspiracy theorists. And who knows what their agendas are? I don't know. I know some people that legitimately believe it, and they don't seem to be bad people. But it sure is easier sometimes to blame your own government, the closest person, than somebody far away. I guess there's two types of people, right? Some people would prefer it to be the enemy to be far, and some would prefer the enemy to be near. Who knows why? Somebody can dig into that psychologically. But it sure did change America. Flying is weird. So many of our freedoms have been given up since that. And none of it's been reversed. It's just further encroachment, And so, yes, at that point, though, when I go, is there a conspiracy? Maybe, because so much has been accomplished because of it. And when I say accomplished, I mean in the erosion of basic freedoms. You got to get a body scan to go to a concert at the park now. I mean, even this latest one, what was it? Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. They didn't allow coolers. You can't even have a picnic in the goddamn park now. This is 9/11 shit. It's part of it. It's encroaching. And you say, no, it's the mass shooters. No, it's this. Well, that's part of terrorism, right? 9/11 really got that terrorism ball rolling. But it was dormant. It was dormant here. It's in people's minds. It's in their hearts. They have that ability. People have that ability to freak out and be weird. You know? That woman that aborted my kid, she's a terrorist. You probably have impulses that if fanned the right way. Remember how gung-ho we all were? George Bush gave that speech, climbed up on that thing. What was it, a truck? The bullhorn. We're going to get you. We were all united. Yes, get him. Yes, get him. We wanted to just send those planes out. All it took was a big visual thing. Not hard to get us all riled up into war. Nope. Not hard at all. It's like the war is there. The desire to go to war. But then again, let's not be negative. We don't need to be totally negative. I think when the slogan "Never Forget" came about, I think some people were thinking, never forget the terrible thing that they did. But I think a lot of people were thinking of the amazing response of, and I hate this term, by the way, the first responders, the firemen, the cops, the civilians, all those people running up those stairs. God, that, if you want to cry, if you want a good cry today on the 9/11 stuff, focus on that, man. All those people that were rushing in to help, and there were a lot. And God, if you just watch those videos again, watching the faces of those people, and for the most part, most people are good, and just looking at all those good people watching the terror happen, and just the astounding, they couldn't believe it, and everybody trying to help and figuring out, boy, America has never been more united than on that day, you know? It's a weird way to be united, but it was true, man. You can look up the videos. Look at the people running down the streets. Look at the people helping each other, running into those buildings, going up and down, and then the walls of the missing, people that didn't have to be there. People that went into the building after and then were in there. And they died because they were saving people or trying to. That stuff will make you cry. If it doesn't, I don't know what's wrong with you. I can't watch those videos. It's so hard to watch. But yet at the same time, it's so inspiring to think of those people. I guess it was Mr. Rogers that said, that when he was afraid, his mom would always say, look for the people that are helping. That's a true statement, boy. What a wise woman that was, if she really said it, and he didn't make it up. And if he did make it up, then kudos to him. So yeah, there's that. You got to balance that shit out. So hard to do the yin and the yin and the yang, the dark and the light. How they mix into this weird thing that's just called your life, humanity. I just watched a show on Netflix the other night called The Spy, starring Sacha Baron Cohen. He did a good job. He did a really good job. The series feels like Mossad propaganda, I have to say. But at the end, no surprise, it's a historical document, so I'm not giving a spoiler. History is not a spoiler. He's hanged. And yeah, I thought, that hanging somebody in the town square is certainly seems barbaric, but when it comes to 9/11 type stuff, that leaving the body there for the people to inspect almost seems kind of wise, because I don't know about you, but when they said they got Bin Laden and then they buried him at sea, a little fishy. When they hauled off all the debris without, instead of inspecting it for 9/11, little fishy. When Epstein just disappears, little fishy. Maybe that whole idea of hanging them in the town square serves a public good, and not a morose one, but just to put conspiracy theorists at bay. Not that they wouldn't still be at bay. I mean, still be frothing at the mouth to try to make up something. It wasn't really him. But yeah, leaving him hanging in the town square. If everybody could go up and inspect Bin Laden. Buried at sea. Yeah, okay. Sure. All right. Yeah, so CIA stuff, man. Epstein, Bin Laden, all these guys have CIA connections. Just saying. But yeah, don't forget the I'm trying to go positive again here. When the darkest gets dark, people have a way of responding very well. And hopefully that's what's going to happen with all this shit. All this, I think the biggest problem since 9/11 has been this understandable cowardice that occurred after that. We didn't hear about Islam and Muslims coming into the United States and taking over before that. But suddenly since that, everybody's like, we don't want to offend the Muslims. We don't want to offend Islam. Before that, it was like, fuck you, quit hijacking planes. My memory of the Middle East all growing up was hijacked planes and burning American flags and screaming in the streets. That was the news always. Now we got a bunch of people bending the knee to Islam and Muslims. And it's psychological, man. It's like cowardice. It's cowardice. It's like, okay, oh shit. It's twofold. It's cowardice and a weird innate response to power. There's almost a respect there. People respect great power, even though they shouldn't. They do. They respect a good ass kicking. And that's a bummer. I'm trying to end this positive and I keep going dark, god damn it. Need to stop. I guess that's what I guess the best way to remember 9/11 is to have tons of complex mixed feelings and not knowing what to do. I think that's the good part. If I'm going to put a bow on this, if I'm going to put a big bow on this for your happy 9/11 day, I would say it's keeping you skeptical. It should keep you skeptical of power and government. And Islam is a government too, and the CIA is part of a government. If anything, if we should have learned anything by 9/11 and the resulting conspiracy theories, any facet of that we could probably look at and say, big government that is big enough to keep big secrets and to pull off big conspiracy should be kept in check. The smaller the better. Yeah, maybe. The less authority, the better. Is that good? Is that something we can agree on? I hear some of you shaking your heads. But that's my spin. My spin is the less power you give any of these assholes, be it, and I don't want to draw the comparison between the American government and Islam. It's unfair. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just saying control, secret control, ultimate control, not good. Not good. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Who said that? Probably some dipshit. Sounds good, though. Yeah, 9/11. Probably a good day to do some deep thinking, some deep pondering, some deep never forgetting. Thanks for listening.